would like to turn it over to Philip in Petaluma Wildlife Museum.
All right. Should I spotlight myself, Diane?
I can try. Oops. Are you there?
I am. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Tacata. I am the lucky instructor of the Petaluma Wildlife Museum here at Petaluma High School. We at the high school are fortunate to be the purveyors of a 9,000 square foot natural history museum that has a small live animal zoo of about 65 animals. And we are the proud school that is the only student-run high school, student-run natural history museums in the country. Excuse me for my nerves. This has been a long time. We've been in distance learning like most of the country for a year, and my students and I are so excited to be able to bring you our presentation today. Today we have 5 groups of our wonderful docents who are going to be showing off our animal ambassadors, talking about a little bit about their biology, their ecology, and their conservation status to be able to share with you. We would love audience participation, so that if you would like to type some questions into the chat, I'll be looking at that and curating those questions and shooting them to the students as they finish off their presentation. Again, each of these students is going to have about 5 minutes in their zone. They're going to give about, 10 minutes in their zone. They're going to give about 5 minutes worth of a presentation, and then we can go to audience questions. With that being the case, we are going to move to our very first zone, and we're going out to our tortoise garden here at the museum, and we're going to have some wonderful docents teach you guys all about our sulcata tortoise and our California desert tortoises. Abby and Zoey, are you guys out there?
Yes, we are, Mr. Tacata.
It's a beautiful day. Ladies, take it away.
Hello, as Mr. Tacata said, I'm Abby, and this is Zoey, and we're going to be talking about 2 really cool reptiles today, our sulcata tortoise and our California desert tortoise.
Yeah, so this guy is called Pacho, and he is a sulcata tortoise. They're native to Africa, where they live in grassland and savanna environments, which perfectly supports their herbivore diet, which means they eat mostly plants. In his case, it's drier plants like grasses and shrubs that are high in fiber and low in protein.
And the California desert tortoise, Morton, who I have here today, lives in the southwest part of the US to the northwest part of Mexico, and he has a plant and fruit part diet.
All right, so Pacho here is still kind of on the younger side. He's only 2 feet long and he weighs 35 pounds. An adult sulcata tortoise can live up to 70 years, get up to 4 feet long, and weigh up to 230 pounds. As you can imagine, something that big with a shell that tough isn't going to have a lot of predators in the wild, but their species is still listed as vulnerable because of humans, the main threat to their populations being habitat loss. However, they are still very common among the pet trade, and you'll often see little tiny babies for sale at reptile shows. But you want to remember how big they'll get and how old they'll live before you consider buying one.
And unlike how Pacho will get much, much bigger, these guys will only get a little bit bigger. These guys will grow up to be about 15 pounds and 15 inches long. And sadly, there are not much of these guys as there was before. Their populations have dropped since the 1980s by 90%. And these guys are critically endangered. And mostly because of these 3 reasons: habitat loss due to livestock raising, roadkill, because these guys love to sunbathe and bask in the sunlight. And since the road and the asphalt will be really, really hot, it would be perfect for them to sunbathe, but sadly they might get run over by cars. And thirdly and lastly would be bacterial diseases such as respiratory disease.
Now, Pacho here was donated to our museum in 2017, and for a while he lived in our teacher's classroom. That is until he accidentally knocked over his heating lamp and almost set the building on fire. True story.
True story.
Yeah, but now he lives out here in our wonderful Gonzalez tortoise garden that was built by students in 2019. And as you can see, he has plenty of space to run around during the day and a nice warm hut to sleep in at night.
Now, how we got our California desert tortoise, we actually have 2. One is not on camera. We actually got them from a random guy who came into the museum with these 2 in a box, saying he couldn't take care of them anymore. What we initially thought later is that he actually had them illegally, since people can't own these guys as pets, since mostly because of their critical endangerment and their conservation status, and don't worry, we've got their permits and we got their permits and license, so these guys are actually now legal to us.
And hopefully he'll be able to live the next 60 years out really happy, teaching whole new generations of conservationists about the wonders of wildlife and the wonders of our state reptile. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's the end of our bit. Do you guys have any questions for us?
All right. Let's see. I have a question from an anonymous attendee. What predators, if any, would a sulcata tortoise have to worry about in the African savanna or African desert?
That's a really good question. Now, as I mentioned before, when they're adults, they don't really have to worry about anything. But when they're younger, any sort of predator that can get into that shell is very dangerous to them. Most of the time, this would be something like hyenas or lions that would gnaw on the shell and try to pry it open and get to the tortoise inside.
Awesome, awesome. A couple questions that will link together. Joe and another person from, I cannot read their name, but Joe's asking how many different tortoises do we actually have? And we need to know if they are boys or girls.
So this is our California desert tortoise, who's actually a subspecies of our gopher tortoises. And we have 2, but these guys are both boys.
Yeah, and the toe here is also a boy, and he's our only sulcata tortoise.
We have a really great question, and I know you guys know the answer to this because we work on it a lot over at the museum. Can our turtles reproduce and have babies?
So these guys actually can, but it's actually illegal for these guys to breed in captivity.
At least we don't have the permits to be able to allow that to happen.
No, we don't.
All right. We have a question from Lindsay DeHart. Lindsay's asking, do they eat watermelon?
They probably could. Yes,
Yeah.
they could.
We don't have any watermelon to feed them right now, but if we were to get some, we would definitely use it.
We do give our tortoises treats on special occasions. What are some of the treats that we give them, Zoe?
Well, their favorite that we know of is actually cactus fruit. And we've gotten donations of it over the past few weeks. And I've actually tried it. It's really good.
They also like the cactus leaves, the nopales. Oh, amazing stuff. They really chomp down. Another question from Mina. She's repeating a question from before. Mina, we have 3 tortoises in total, 1 sulcata tortoise and 2 California desert tortoises. All right. Mina's also asking, how is global warming and weather affecting their conditions or the conditions of each species?
Well, I'm not sure if I could tell you any effect of these species in particular, but the rise in temperatures has been affecting turtle eggs. And tortoises are actually a type of turtle, but that can get a little confusing for some people. And they have something called temperature sex dependency, which means the temperature their eggs are incubated at will determine whether they are male and female. And the rise in temperatures has been really messing up that system.
To continue on with what Zoe was saying, turtles and tortoises will develop their sex dependent on their incubation temperature. Since we have global warming happening on our planet, our populations of wild tortoises are being skewed towards being female. So we're having populations nowadays every year, every generation, where we're going to have 60, 70, 80% females in the population. That reduces genetic diversity in the population, and that's bad all over for these species. All turtles around the world are experiencing that. That's a great question, and Zoe, you're a superstar. We have an anonymous attendee is asking, are the turtles immune to COVID-19?
Well, we've never heard of a case of them getting it, so we're not actually sure, but we have heard of other animals getting it, so I wouldn't say it's entirely impossible.
Yeah, I think right now the only animals that are on record for actually getting COVID-19 are mammals, so our reptiles should be safe from COVID-19. Last couple of questions. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Would these 2 swim in the water? Would they swim in a pool?
No, they could not swim in a pool on their own, but we do soak them in tubs where their feet touch the ground, which helps them with their bowels.
Awesome, awesome. We have a second question. Will they get spiked when they eat cactus?
spikes as in pricked by thorns?
I can answer that one. We usually cut off the spikes and things like that from the Napoli leaves. So that's not that usually isn't a problem. In the wild, maybe they will get spiked. We're going to go with one more question before we move on to our next enclosure. Mina is asking, when they're put together, are they a danger to one another?
Actually, yes, since these two are both boys, and since one's also bigger than the other, one will act more aggressively towards the other mostly due to dominance.
Yes, it can actually be very dangerous to keep tortoises of different species and tortoises of the same sex together, especially the males. They will fight, and sometimes accidents can happen. So we definitely need to house them in different places. Zoey and Abby, you did a wonderful job this morning. You guys are superstars. Thank you so much for your presentation. We're going to be moving on now to our next zone. We're going to move over to our North America zone in the Everglades. I'm going to spotlight these young ladies right now. Hello, Caroline. Hello, Natalia. How are you guys doing?
Hi, we're doing great. I'm Caroline.
I'm Natalia.
And this is Kiara, our Burmese python. So if anyone out there in the audience has seen Burmese pythons before, you may be a little confused because Kiara is this nice bright yellow color, and normal Burmese pythons are a dark brown. So the reason that Kiara has this lighter color is she is what we call hypomelanistic. So that just means she has less melanin in her skin, which makes her a lighter color instead of a dark color.
The reason why you wouldn't normally see this in the wild is because where they are native in the jungles of Burma, they need to blend into the dark leaves in order to avoid predators when they're young and be able to hide from prey so they can strike. And she is a nice highlighter yellow, so she would be very obvious to any prey so they could get away before she could hunt, or any predators to get them when they're young.
Right. So these guys are actually one of the largest snakes in the world. Right now, Kiara is about 10 feet long, and these guys can grow to be 20 feet long. So if anyone out there in the audience is around 4 feet, I want you to imagine 5 of you stacked on top of each other. That's how long this snake can get. And right now she's half of that size. And these guys can actually get up to be 300 pounds. So these guys are the top 3 of the biggest snakes in all of the world.
Wow.
So where were these guys found again, Natalia?
These guys are from Southeast Asia in the jungles of Burma. But Caroline, where else can they be found?
Right. So we're in North America right now. I'm not sure if you guys heard that, but these Burmese pythons can actually be found in the Florida Everglades. Now, they're what we call an invasive species. Maybe some of you out there in the audience have heard that term before, but if not, that just means it can be a plant or an animal that is introduced to a place where they are not native to. So, right, we remember that she is native to Southeast Asia, which Florida is not in Southeast Asia, of course. So how did these guys get introduced into Florida?
These guys came to Florida through the pet trade. And what happened to these guys is people said, I really like that snake. I want it for a pet. But with bad pet ownership comes bad decisions. So what happened is people bought these snakes when they were little babies. And as they started getting bigger and bigger, people stopped having the space to hold them. And they stopped being able to give them the bigger food that they needed. So they just released them into the Florida Everglades. But Caroline, how did the population rise so much in such a short time?
That's a great question. So out in the Florida Everglades, there's nothing that has evolved to eat these guys in the Everglades because they're not native to there. So these guys can live in the Everglades without having to worry about getting eaten at all. And one female Burmese python can lay up to 70 eggs. So there's a ton of Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades. And if they're laying 70 eggs from one snake and there's nothing eating them, their population is going to grow super fast. So how are they trying to keep this population down? It sounds like nothing's really keeping the population from growing.
Yeah, it's really difficult to catch these snakes, and there aren't a lot of facilities or people that are properly equipped to take care of them. So right now, the best we can do is just hunt these snakes and try to get them out of the ecosystem by just hunting them into local extinction. Of course, they are native to Burma, which means that the ecosystem will actually benefit from these guys going away. So right now people are hunting them professionally for money. The bigger the snake, the more money you will get, or just in general for sport.
Right. So at the museum, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what the heck do we feed such a big snake? So currently, Kiara is eating the largest rat we can find, and eventually she will move up to be eating full-size rabbits. So these guys get really big. All right, yeah. I think we're ready for some audience questions.
All right. That's a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Natalia. Let's go with some quick questions here. We have Priya. She is asking, how old is Kiara?
That's a great question. So Kiara is 5 or 6 years old. We're not really sure, but around that age.
Awesome. Neha is asking, how often are they fed?
How often are they fed? That is a great question. So that actually depends on their age. Currently, Kiara is fed maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, but when they are younger, they eat more often. And as they grow older and eat bigger food, they have to eat less often. And they can even go for months at a time without having to be fed.
All right, here's a very common question that folks ask about snakes. Udo is asking, is this snake venomous?
Kiara is not venomous. She is not harmful. If you get bit by her, it might hurt, but she wouldn't hurt. She wouldn't give you any venom and make you sick. But she is super nice. And
could you explain how this animal actually puts its food down?
This snake is what we call a constrictor. So what they do is they kind of coil up, they wait to strike, and they get their food really fast and then coil up and try to suffocate it. At the museum here, we do feed these guys frozen rats, so they are dead when you get them, but she still does the same process. She snaps at the rat, kind of coils around it, and then unhinges her jaw, and kind of just eats it. Yeah.
And a fun fact about most snakes, if you can tell if they're getting ready to strike, because they will make an S shape with their heads, and that they make that shape every time before they strike.
Awesome.
Fun fact in there.
We have a question from Jinsen. Why doesn't this snake bite you?
That's a great question. So we are very cautious, and we do wash her head, because snakes aren't, they're snakes. They're not like your pet dog. But Kiara is out a lot with us docents, and she is one of the museum's most featured animals. So she does get a lot of time with being handled and stuff. But of course, we're always vigilant to make sure everyone is safe, including Kiara herself.
A question from Shreya. Where did we get Kiara from?
Kiara was bought from a breeder about 5 or 4 years ago. So she was not taken from her wild habitat or caught in the Everglades.
Awesome. Kevin is asking, what eats them in their native country? I guess another way to phrase that question is, what are their natural predators in Southeast Asia?
That is such a great question. Natalia?
In Burma, their natural predators generally hunt them when they're young. Of course, when they're 20 feet long, it's very difficult to catch and eat an entire snake. But when they are younger, their main predators are very large birds of prey.
Okay. And then birds of prey will eat them about up to 5 feet.
And I'd like to just tack on to that question. You might be thinking, well, why don't things eat these guys when they're younger, when they're in the Everglades? Well, the natural predators in the Everglades are things like bobcats, things like birds of prey, things like cougars. And unfortunately, because of habitat loss and human interference, all of those natural predators were already knocked down. So even the baby Burmese pythons that are born in the Everglades don't have that many predators going after them. Then they all get to adult size and then nothing eats them. And that's why there's such an invasive problem in the Everglades. We're going to go with a couple more questions. What is the lifespan of this type of snake?
That is a great question. So in captivity, these guys can live up to around 15 to 18 years. And in the wild?
Probably around 10 to 12, just because, natural predators where they are native.
Awesome. Arena asked, which snake is this? Arena, this is Kiara, our Burmese python. She is a hypomelanistic morph. Let's take one more question. Let me see what we got here. Here's a good question. Where are they in their food chain or food web in their native habitat?
In their native habitat, they would be considered apex predators once they're this size. When they're younger, they'd still be considered predators, just not apex predators.
Oh, Natalia, Caroline, thank you so much for sharing Kiara with us. What a beautiful regal animal. It's just wonderful to get to know a lot of these wonderful facts so that we can understand what's going on in our own countries, with these type of invasive species, what it takes to be, a responsible pet owner, which is really don't go after these snakes unless you have the ability to take care of them, because that's what caused that problem in the first place. And last, to show that even this snake, which is so super powerful, can be something that with proper technique and proper care, even high school students can take care of these guys and handle them safely, to be able to show you, their wonderful adaptations and their wonderful biology. Ladies, great job, great job. We're going to be moving on now to our iguana enclosure. Riley, how are you guys doing out there?
I'm doing today. My name is Riley and my wonderful cameraman is Fabian, and these are beautiful green iguanas. This is our male Kermit and this is our female Ruby. And we are going to also be talking about invasive species. But first, let's go ahead and start with where these guys are from. They are from Mexico to central Brazil, and they live in the more tropical areas where there's a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees. It's very lush. And they have been suffering from deforestation in their native homes, which has been driving them to die or have to find other places to live. And it also allows their main predators, large birds of prey, to find them a lot easier. Since they are an arboreal species, you can tell by their long claws and other features that they like to live up in the trees. In fact, they can climb upwards of 50 feet high, which is super cool. I wish I could do that. And the main problem with these guys is that they are also invasive species, like I mentioned. They are invasive to the Rio de Grande Valley in Texas, the Florida Everglades as well, like the Burmese pythons, Hawaii, and as well, Hawaii. Oh yeah, Hawaii as well.
And Puerto Rico, Riley, and Puerto Rico.
And Puerto Rico, excellent, thank you. All right, so these guys are super invasive, again, similar to the Burmese python because of the illegal pet trade. People will see these animals online when they're very small and see their bright colors and their super cool features. And they'll think, oh, great, I can take care of this as a pet, super easy, it's super small, and it won't cost a lot of money. These guys get huge. You can see that they get upwards of 5 feet long, and the males can weigh more than 17 pounds, and these guys eat a ton of vegetation. So what happens is the owners end up realizing that they don't have enough money to pay for the food, they don't have the area or the temperature to take care of these animals, and they'll release them in their backyards. And this is a huge problem because their main predators, birds of prey, large birds of prey, aren't found in the areas where they're invasive. So they're able to reproduce, oh bless you, Ruby, and kind of go wherever they like and eat as much vegetation as they please, which destroys the local habitats and makes the local animals not able to find the resources they need to survive. How people are dealing with this is in Puerto Rico, actually, fun fact, they're called gallina de palo, which is the bamboo chicken. And this originates because iguanas supposedly taste like chicken. I've never tried it, and I never will because I love them too much. But it's great for the invasive species problem because locals are starting to eat the iguanas after killing them, which helps them in the marketplace. They can sell it, make a profit, and it also helps keep the population numbers down.
Riley, let me pause you for a second. Hey, Fabian, why don't you get into a position where you can show our iguanas and Riley at the same time? Just getting a little bit of a, that's nice.
There we
Beautiful
go.
shot there. Sorry for cutting in. Riley, continue.
Yeah, no worries. So now you guys are probably thinking that iguanas are super cool, right? So let's go ahead into the details that make people think that these would make really cool pets. So this is Kermit over here. It looks like he's going to stand up for us a bit. And we're going to go into some of the cool features about iguanas. So these are their spines right along here, you can see. And some of you might be thinking, they look pretty sharp, right? Not really. Yeah, I can just kind of brush my hand right along against it. Their spines are mainly used for intimidation purposes to make them look big and scary, and also for mating purposes. So the bigger and grander spines they have, the more attractive they seem to females or males. And these down here, if you can see Fabian getting in a close-up, these are called dewlaps right here. So the big ones here on Kermit, they're far larger on males. They are called chick magnets, quote unquote. The larger the dewlaps on a male, the more attractive they will appear from females. So that's really helpful for during mating season. The bigger the dewlaps you have, the more likely you are to find a mate. And the biggest adaptation of these guys, Ruby's in a perfect spot, if you can see right here in the center of her head. That is called her parietal eye or her third eye. And basically what this allows her to do is two big things. It allows her to regulate her temperature. So right now she can feel this heat coming off of her body. And her parietal eye is telling her, oh, this is the sweet spot. Like, this is great. I can heat up my body since reptiles are cold-blooded, and it allows her to get her heat. And if she's too cold, her third eye will tell her that she needs to go for a sunbathe for a little bit and warm up her body. The second feature of the parietal eye is if I take my hand here, you can see my shadow going right over her head. Even if she can't see my hand, she can sense my shadow there. And you're probably thinking, well, why would they need that? Since their predators are large birds of prey, when they fly over in the wild where they're native, you can see Ruby can kind of tell my hands there. It lets them know that the bird is flying above them and that they need to go seek shelter, which is an excellent adaptation, especially for arboreal creatures who climb up in trees. And you guys are probably thinking, well, how do we take care of them here at the museum? Our iguanas here, we assure you, are super happy and super healthy. Ruby and Kermit are our two animal ambassadors. We love them very much. They've been here forever. And we make sure that they have lots of vegetation, lots of salad to eat, that it's nice and humid in here. I'm actually working up a sweat. And they have lots of room to run around and climb, and they have just a great time here.
Awesome.
And we're going to go ahead and take some questions now, if anyone has any.
Okay, we have a few great ones. The first one has come up multiple times, the latest by Arena. Arena's asking, do these guys use camouflage?
That's an excellent question. So green iguanas will range from a color from a dark green to a lighter color like Ruby here. We have had questions like, are they like chameleons? Can they change colors to camouflage? There's multiple main reasons why iguanas will change colors. One of them is for breeding. So Ruby here in her past life probably changed her color to be a more attractive, brighter color to allow her to seem more attractive to males. Another reason that they would change color is due to age. So if Kermit was a lighter green in his past, you can see he's becoming more brown down here on his legs. That means that he's getting older. So they will change color from age as well. And also when they shed, they tend to change colors a little bit. So when Ruby sheds, she'll probably become a little bit of a lighter color underneath. And the other main reason is called psychological thermoregulation. So basically what that means, which is similar to an adaptation, it's not camouflage, but it helps them in a way. If Kermit, for example, was out in a cold environment, what would happen is he would shift his color to a much darker shade of green, and he would begin to have lines on the side of his body. And the reason for this is that darker colors absorb a lot more sunlight and more heat. So he is trying to help protect himself by becoming a much darker color to absorb that sunlight and live in the cold environment. And let's say Ruby here was in a super warm environment, she would probably make her color a lot lighter so that she would reflect sunlight and she wouldn't overheat. But yeah, that's an excellent question.
Fantastic, Rouse. We have a question. Why are they staying still and not moving around a lot?
That's a great question. So Kermit and Ruby are very old iguanas, so they aren't as spry as they used to be in their young old age. They like this pad right here is called a heating pad, so it emits a lot of nice warmth for them and allows them to heat their bodies up. Most of the time when we bring them out for tours and for people, they'll run around the floor and they'll be a lot more adventurous, but it looks like this morning they're still waking up a bit, which I don't blame them. But they like to stay in this one zone, particularly for all the heat.
Awesome. We have a question from Peyton. I'm gonna segue. I'm gonna take over this one for the first part, Riley, and let you answer the second.
Of course.
Peyton is asking, why is the pet trade taking the iguanas from their natural environment? Actually, Peyton, I believe Riley just made a small mistake at the beginning. She said that one of the reasons that these guys got out was because of the illegal pet trade. That was a mistake. They actually got out as part of a very legal pet trade here in the United States. Here in the US, iguana breeders will breed hundreds of thousands to millions of these guys a year and legally ship them, and sell them not just in this country, but in other countries as well. However, in their native habitat down in South America, in places like Costa Rica and such, they are endangered due to things like habitat loss and due to things like human interference. So you can actually go right now, if you chose to, you could go right now over to PetSmart and pick up one of these guys. Riley, could you show us with your hands about how big the ones they sell at PetSmart are?
Yeah, so they're going to be about this big from the tip of their head to their tail.
Now, this brings up a really, really important situation that we talk about a lot at the museum. So you might think, oh, there's this small little beautiful lizard. It's pretty cool. I'm going to go buy a 20-gallon tank, put it in there and make it my pet. Riley, what do we think about that at the museum?
That is a terrible idea. These guys, as you can see, get huge. Kermit probably, if he was stretched out, would be about, let's say, maybe this long, which is massive. So if one day you just end up going into PetSmart or Petco, like Tacata mentioned, and you want to pick up one of these animals, I hope you did your research, because these guys take a lot of time, a lot of effort. They're also very social animals, so you need to be with them a lot of the time. So it's a huge responsibility, and much like the Burmese python, you need to know before you buy. So if you have like the kind of setup we have here and the right temperature, the food, and the money in order to take care of them, that's great, and you can give them a happy home. But otherwise, it's best to just leave them in the wild where they're from.
And I'd also like to interject, ladies and gentlemen, you need to have the commitment to take care of an animal like this. And quite frankly, 99% of the population doesn't. These animals will live upwards of 15 years. Ruby and Kermit, we're lucky to have them. They are 15 and 16 years old. But a lot of people aren't able to give that kind of commitment to their animals. And that's why we have issues like these guys being let out in non-native habitats and destroying wild ecosystems. Riley, what a wonderful presentation. Fabian, thank you for the wonderful camera work. We're going to have to move on now. And right now we're going to go from our cold-blooded animal ambassadors to some of our only warm-blooded ambassadors at the museum. We are going over to Daphne and Bailey and Abby and our chinchillas. Ladies, how are you guys doing?
Hello.
All right.
I'm Bailey. I'm Daphne, and we have Abby helping us behind the camera. So this is our super cool fluffy friend Cheech, and she is a long-haired chinchilla. And during this presentation, she might be trying to jump, but don't worry, that is totally normal. You will find out later that chinchillas actually really like to jump.
Yeah, so Cheech here is one of 3 female chinchillas that we have here at the museum. The other 2, Abby and Natalia, live across from our old reptile room. So chinchillas in the wild, they are adapted to the super cold mountainous regions of Argentina and Chile. They live in herds of about 14 to 100 chinchillas in crevices along the mountains, and they have adapted to have super thick fur, and they have the thickest fur out of any land mammal on the planet.
So these chinchillas actually live in big herds of up to 14 to 100 chinchillas, which is a lot, but it's actually really beneficial to them because since there are so many chinchillas in one herd, there are so many eyes to be on the lookout for predators, and chinchillas have a lot of predators, some of which are skunks, snakes, wild dogs, wild cats, and birds of prey. So they also have a few other really cool adaptations, one of which is that they can jump super high. They can jump up to 6 feet, which is crazy because look how small they are. Another really cool adaptation, but it's also a really stinky one, is that they can spray their urine at predators when they come to attack them. And also,
oh man.
yeah, but this has happened before here too. So another adaptation is that if their fur is bitten by a predator, they can release it so that they can escape easier.
Yeah, so chinchillas have also adapted to be most active around dawn and dusk because they are primarily herbivores. So they usually eat grass, but they also supplement their diets with bugs and bird eggs. And at these times of day, the bugs are the most active and birds can leave their eggs unattended for the chinchillas to eat.
And so female chinchillas, they can breed at any time throughout the whole year, but they do have an extended gestation period, and they can only give birth to 2 pups per pregnancy. And so the females, like Cheech here, they are called velvets or sows, and the males are called bulls or boars.
Cool. Very cool. Just a quick interjection, Bailey, we have a request from one of our audience members. Can you show us a close-up of her face and her body?
Of course. So this is Cheech.
Yeah.
And as you can see, she's very, very fluffy, super soft.
All right. Well, Daphne or Bailey, could one of you guys tell us a little bit about their conservation story, how they got to be endangered in their native Andes?
Yeah, so chinchillas, because they have such soft hair, it is highly valued on the black market, and it takes about 150 chinchilla pelts to create a single fur, like this skirt that we have here. So due to this and their super low reproductive rates, they are highly endangered in the wild. There's only about 10,000 left in the hills that they live in.
So because sorry, she's moving around a bit. Because these chinchillas are so highly valued, the over exploitation has been going on for over 100 years. And actually in the 1950s, they were thought to have gone completely extinct in Bolivia, Peru, and Chile. And so now in the past 20 years, the wild chinchilla populations have gone down 90%, which is huge. And like Daphne said before, we only have about 10,000 living left in the wild, which puts them on the endangered species list. So now if you would like to get a chinchilla coat, you can get it from, they have chinchilla farms, which aren't necessarily the best thing, but it is much better than being taken directly from the wild.
Yeah, so here at the museum, obviously we do not run a chinchilla farm, but we do take very good care of our 3 little ladies. We give them Timothy hay and rose hips as snacks throughout the day. And we also make sure that they always have fresh water in their enclosure. We also give them wood and mineral chews because like any other rodent, their teeth grow super fast and it allows them to chew on them throughout the day and prevents their teeth from growing too long. We also spot clean every morning and we deep clean about once a week.
So, and we also give them a bath of 1 to 2 times a week, but we don't give them bath in water. We actually give them a dust bath. So here's the bowl that we let our Cheech bathe in. This is actually called pumice, and it's sort of like volcanic ash. And they will go in the bowl and they'll roll around and they look super funny when they do it. And they really enjoy taking dust baths. And this actually is really good for them because it coats their fur and it protects them from pests such as mites and ticks. So our chinchillas, since they were all raised in captivity, they are all pretty docile and pretty nice to each other, but females in the wild usually are pretty aggressive.
Yeah, so we have 3, Abby and Natalia, we got from a breeder in 2019 in Oregon. They were fundraised by our 2 alumni, Abby and Natalia. We raised about $600 from 500 people in one night at the annual pasta feed in 2019. We got them from Oregon, and then this girl, Cheech, was donated by a student this year to the museum, and she's still getting a little bit of socialization with them before we put her in their enclosure too.
All right.
Awesome.
Oh, yes. If you have any questions, please let us know.
All right, first I got to interject. We have so many requests from everyone to let these guys jump or let these guys roll around in the ash bath. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we can't allow that to happen right now because we have to take them away from their enclosure. If a teacher jumps out and starts running away from our docents, oh, it'll be kind of a circus show. So it's not the best idea to do that right now, but I can assure you, these guys are amazing jumpers. When they do take their baths, it's a pretty amazing thing. They spin around like little whirling dervishes. It's a very cool thing to be able to watch. But let's answer some different questions. First, Naomi's asking, do the chinchillas come in different colors?
Yes, of course they do. We actually are Abby and Natalia. They are both a little bit different color. I think Abby is a little lighter and Natalia is a little darker. But they usually stay in sort of a gray, dark gray to light gray range.
Awesome, awesome. Another question, do they have babies and how many do they have at a time?
Yeah, they reproduce super slowly, but they only have about 2 babies per litter. So that's why their species are dwindling because of the high demand on the black market too.
Kelsey is asking, do they squeak? What kind of vocalizations do these guys make?
So they actually make sort of like a barking noise, and it's not like a loud barking like a dog. It's sort of kind of like a tiny little maybe Chihuahua bark, but they do have vocalization.
It sounds kind of similar to a duck quacking.
Yes, exactly. You could compare it to a duck. Yes.
Awesome. Pragati's asking a question, and I'm going to ask you guys to break it down. She's asking, what do they eat? So maybe you could tell us what they eat in nature versus what we do in terms of their diet here at the museum.
Yeah, so in nature, they are primarily herbivores. They usually eat grass and different types of seeds. Here we give them Timothy hay, which is a special type of hay that they like. And we also have rose hip treats that we give them throughout the day too. Also in nature, they'll sometimes eat bird eggs if they're left unattended for too long.
And wow, so they're omnivorous.
Yes.
That is very, very cool. And Another question. Arena's asking, are these guys safe from the coronavirus?
Yes, I'm pretty sure they are safe from the coronavirus. I don't
Yeah.
think that the chinchillas can get that.
Yes, as far as we know, there's no known cases of chinchillas getting coronavirus. It's a great question. What other ones are on here? Let me look. Oh, how old are our chinchillas?
So Abby and Natalia are about 1.5 years old, maybe closer to 2 years. We got them when they were 4 months old in June of 2019, which, yeah, so they're almost 2 years old. And then this girl, we got her from a student and she's a little bit older than them. I think she's about 7 years old.
That's awesome. If you guys are looking to possibly get a chinchilla as a pet, please do your research. There are breeders around the country that sell very high quality chinchillas if you do want companionship from this animal as a pet. However, there are some really big drawbacks that come back with chinchillas and you better be ready for them. Girls, can you tell us some of the difficulties of taking care of these guys?
You have to make sure that they do not get wet. That's one of the most important things because their fur is so thick that if they got wet, they would just freeze to death. That's why we give them the dust baths instead of water. And if you give them water, you have to give it through the little thing on the side of her cage over here, which is not a very big opening for them to drink through, so that prevents their fur from getting all wet.
Well, how about the cleaning aspect of
Yes,
them?
so another thing is, as you can see, Chicha's cage is already pretty messy. They are super duper messy and they poop all the time. So you have to clean out their cage basically every single day. It's a lot of work.
Oh, ladies, thank you so much for showing us this beautiful animal ambassador. Thank you, Cheech, for showing us your wonderfully cute face and your fuzzy fur. We're going to move on to our last enclosure. We're going to move outside to our courtyard to our young docent, Enzo and Sam. Enzo and Sam, take it away.
Morning, everybody. My name's Enzo, and I'm a senior docent here at the Wildlife Museum. And we also have Sam behind the camera right now helping us out. Today, in this box, we have an African bullfrog that we're going to be talking about. Now, as you guys hear in the name, an African bullfrog, if you probably guessed, it is from Africa. So these guys actually live pretty much anywhere in Central Africa, all the way down to Southern Africa. And this one right here is definitely has been in the box for a little bit, so she really wants to run around. You guys notice that I say she. I believe it is a female because males tend to get a little bit larger than this. If you guys imagine the size of a dinner plate, that's about how big males get. And she is a few years old, so that would make me assume that she's probably just a large female instead of a small male. And you guys can also see here that I'm getting my hands wet to make sure that she is able to still breathe and that nothing gets into her skin, because the fun fact about amphibians is they actually breathe through their skin. So their skin is very, very thin. And because of that, they're able to breathe through it. So when they're in the water, they can breathe through it, and the water and whatever's in the water goes into their skin as well. So for that also, frogs and amphibians are known as indicator species. So when scientists are looking at an environment and want to make sure that it's doing well and that all the animals are healthy and there's no bad things in the water or in the environment, the first place they look is amphibians and frogs like this one right here. And the reason for that is because, as I said, their skin lets anything go through it. So if there's bad things in the water, such as heavy metals like lead or anything that might be pollution, it shows up in the frogs first. So the frogs may get sick, they may die, and that's a really good way for us to tell what's going on with the environment and the ecosystem to make sure it's healthy. And another thing about them, they're also known as the pixie frog, which is kind of funny because they're pretty darn big. And they're one of the biggest frog species in the world, in fact. Let me get a good grip on her. She doesn't like to stand still. And as you guys can see too, she is pretty big. She's pretty puppy too. So you guys can see you can just squish her like that. And the reason for that is what she'll do when she's afraid and feels like something's going to eat her, she will puff up and get really, really big. So she's pretty calm right now, but she can inflate her body and breathe in a lot of air because her bones aren't all that hard. And it's able for, and she's got more like cartilage, like what's in your nose or your ears. And that allows her body to inflate really big when she's getting scared. And another thing that she can do when she's scared is she can make a loud noise. And that's what we call a croak. She makes a really loud croak if she feels like she's threatened or something's going to get her. And if you're a predator and you want to eat one of these guys, you're going to be scared away when you hear this thing make the noise. And unfortunately, she probably won't make it for us today because she's just used to being held. So, but as you guys can imagine, you've probably heard a frog make a ribbit or a croak, and that's a way to defend themselves and communicate with each other. So I'm gonna get my hands wet one more time.
Sam and Enzo, we have a request from the audience to get a closer look. Sam, can we get a close up on Suki? Wow.
He's got a yellow belly, as you guys can see too. He's
So
green on
again,
the top.
So again, ladies and gentlemen out there, this is an African bullfrog. It's the largest species of anurin or frog in the world. The males will get as big as dinner plates. They're also commonly known as the pixie frog. I don't know if you heard Enzo say that earlier, which is kind of an oxymoron. When you think pixies, you think very small things like fairies, like Tinkerbell. Man, these guys are the opposite of small. They are just gigantic animals. Enzo, we have a wonderful question from the audience. Adeline is asking, do they eat their own eggs?
So this species actually can get cannibalistic, and they will sometimes eat baby tadpoles or their own eggs in the wild. But it's usually the males that will be doing that. But it's also interesting because the males will sometimes eat the baby tadpoles or the eggs, but they also are really good at defending the eggs and the baby tadpoles. And it's really, really uncommon that we see that in reptiles or amphibians, because most of the adults, especially the males, are just done once they're done mating, but this one will actually stick around and make sure that the tadpoles grow up to adult sizes.
Let me interject a little, Enzo. That is a very rare behavior you see in the amphibian world, you guys. Most bullfrogs are cannibalistic. They reproduced in such high numbers that it actually makes sense for them to eat even their own brothers and sisters to make space. However, in this species of bullfrog, the males actually will take care of their babies, protecting them from other frogs from eating them. And they'll also act as ecosystem engineers. Enzo, could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, so they'll act as ecosystem engineers. And what Mr. Tacata is saying what he means when he says that is, if they are living in somewhere that is starting to get dry or there's not enough water in the pond, they'll actually start digging around and making sure that there's enough water for their babies to be living in, because it's really important that they have water. In fact, depending on where they live, they will burrow underground for up to 10 months during the entire year just to get enough water. So in places that are more humid and wet, they can chill out there pretty much year round. But when it gets really, really dry in certain places in Africa, as you can imagine, they have to stay underground for, like I said, as many as 10 months out of the year to make sure they have enough water.
Fantastic, Enzo. Thank you. All right, let's go do some of these questions that are popping up. Got some great ones here. Enoch is asking, how high do they jump?
I don't know how high they jump, but they can jump kind of far. I'd probably say just a few feet, maybe probably anywhere between like 1 to 5 feet. They could probably jump, but a frog like this doesn't jump too high. It's mostly.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we just lost Sam. Let's see if we could get back to him. In the meantime, let me see if these young people can get back. I'll finish Enzo's answer for him. Those frogs cannot jump very high, but they can jump very, very far, very, very long. Every year in Calaveras County in California, they have the bullfrog long jump contest. It's a series of 3 jumps, and I believe the record is somewhere around 47 feet. So divide 47 by 3. That means each American bullfrog can jump somewhere, around 14 feet at a hop. Well, they tried it one year with an African bullfrog just to see what happened. And in 3 very short jumps, they weren't even good jumps, the African bullfrog cleared 60 feet. So in a vertical manner, in a horizontal manner, they could jump almost 20 feet. They got some really, really strong legs, some pretty amazing stuff. We are sorry that we lost Enzo. I'll take any other questions on these guys if you have them.
Actually,
They're back.
Very sorry about that. We had
No
some technical
problem.
difficulties, but we are back.
All right. Would you guys like to finish up the presentation, or you want some more questions?
Yeah, any more questions that you guys want to ask about this beautiful creature right here?
All right. Priya is asking, how old can they get?
That's a really good question. It's really interesting. You wouldn't think these guys would live long, but they can live anywhere between 20 and 45 years. Mostly in captivity, though, at that 45 number. But in the wild, they can live around 20 years. And that's a pretty long lifespan for something as small as this. We don't really see that very often in amphibians or reptiles.
Wow. So if you kept this as a pet, that's a real commitment. Amazing. You'd have to go to college with it. We have another question from Shreya. What do they eat in nature? What do they eat in nature?
In nature, they will actually eat just about anything that can fit in their mouth. So anything that is smaller than their head or their mouth, they will try and eat it. So that could be other frogs, it could be fish, it could be anything that's in the pond, it could be bugs, whatever it may be, they will definitely try and eat it as long as it fits in their mouth.
Fantastic. Another question from Enoch. He says he knows some toads have poisonous secretions. Does this guy have poisonous secretions?
I do not believe that this one does. That would be one reason that we're allowed to keep it here. Some laws don't allow you to keep certain poisonous or venomous reptiles and amphibians, just in case something goes wrong. So a bullfrog like this does not have any poisonous secretions now.
Fantastic. Kaylee is asking an awesome question about their fecundity. How many babies does one female have? How many eggs does the female lay?
I read somewhere that the females can lay roughly 4,000 eggs in one at a time. So that is a lot of babies, but keep in mind that not all of them survive. Not all of them even get to tadpole ages. So only so many of those 4,000 are actually going to grow up to adults like this one.
Awesome. And so we're going to end with one question, and I'm going to see I'm excited about your awesome answer because this excites me as well. Yasir is asking, what are their teeth like? In addition to that, Enzo, could you tell a little bit about how frogs swallow their food?
Yeah, so hold up. Their teeth are pretty small. Like many reptiles and amphibians, they don't have big old fangs like you might see in movies. But when they are eating, what they do is they have the food in their mouth, and their eyes actually, when they blink, their eyes push into their skull and into their mouth, and that helps push the food down into their stomach.
That's awesome. So they actually use their eyes to help them swallow food. That's an amazing, amazing adaptation. And so thank you so much for sharing Suki with us. I'd like to ask our host, Diane, if she could put all of us in kind of like a gallery view right now so the audience can see all of us together. Natalia, if you could turn your camera on.
Let me see, it's not letting me.
Hi, this is Rachel with UC A&R. We're in a webinar, and so it does look like attendees will not be able to turn on their cameras. We could ask them to unmute, but we won't be able to.
Not the attendees, Rachel. I was asking if our presenters could all be put on the screen at the same time, including myself.
Oh, let's see.
I have everyone in gallery view, but it's not changing it. Oh, thank you.
I'm going to unspotlight.
Yeah, we'll unspotlight Enzo.
So it looks like it worked because I have two devices open.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say on behalf of the Petaluma Wildlife Museum and our wonderful student docents, thank you for joining us this afternoon. It was a great honor for us to be able to share some of the wonderful adaptations and wonderful conservation stories of these creatures we have at our museum. Again, my name is Tacata. I'm the instructor of the Petaluma Wildlife Museum. We are the only high school student-run museum in the country, and we'd love for you guys to visit us sometime in the summer after the COVID restrictions are lifted. We have open houses every first and third Saturday of the month, so you can check us out on our website, petalumawildlifemuseum.org. Other than that, we are just so thankful that you came. We hope you learned a lot of wonderful information, a lot of wonderful facts. Again, I want to thank our student docents. Docents, will you guys say goodbye? All right. And just again, wanted to thank North Bay Science Discovery Day and our host, Diane, for having us. Diane, thank you so much. And we hope you guys join some of the other panels and learn some wonderful, awesome things about science and engineering today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. You guys did a great job. We'll see you on another one.
All right.